Well, hello, friends and fans. It's beyond awesome to have you guys all back this year.
Not all video game remakes are recreated equally. For every genuinely game-changing Final Fantasy VII Remake or Metroid Zero mission, you have comparatively more surface-level restorations like 2018's Shadow of the Colossus or 2020's Destroy All Humans. Until Dawn fits firmly into that latter camp. Its colourful cast of horny teenagers and spooky snowy mountains setting have never looked better, but its gripping life-or-death decision-based gameplay is more or less identical to how I remember it from the 2015 original. The general lack of gameplay improvements and noticeable performance problems are a poor trade-off for what it offers, and that makes it tough to recommend, particularly since its premium price makes Until Dawn seem less like a must-have bit of moonlit murder and something closer to a case of daylight robbery.
I'm so sorry.
Here's what our reviewer said in her review of the 2015 original.
At its best, Until Dawn is a gleefully cheesy homage to horror movies set in a world built by a developer that clearly adores the genre. Although its thrills are tempered by a lack of story cohesion, a robust choice and consequence system, and a keen eye on horror's most ridiculous tropes, makes Until Dawn ultimately worth playing.
That sentiment still largely rings true. It's basically the same game after all. While Supermassive's subsequent choose-your-own misadventure horror stories like 2021's House of Ashes and 2022's The Quarry have come close to matching it, Until Dawn still remains the most well-rounded execution of the choice and consequence-heavy formula that the developer has made its own. Its schlock horror story is crammed with entertainingly gory scenarios inspired by the likes of Saw, The Descent, and Poltergeist. And its cast is headlined by strong performances from Hayden Panettiere, Peter Stormare, and Rami Malek, whose characters remain just as engaging today as they were 9 years ago, even in spite of the occasionally cringe-inducing dialogue.
Excuse me? Did you say something?
Oh, did you not hear me? Was your sluttiness too loud?
While the cast and remote Blackwood Pines setting remain the same, everything has been rebuilt in Unreal Engine 5 for this remake, and it shows in ways both good and bad. There's no question that the higher quality textures and dramatically improved lighting combine to give this interactive slasher film a considerably more realistic edge.
Did you see this view? I mean, holy cow.
And there are a number of welcome environmental touches like snow that visibly crumples underfoot, and the rays of a setting sun that are reflected in the window glass of a gondola. However, these enhancements come at the cost of a frame rate that's often every bit as shaky as the freaked out teens on screen. And at its worst, this rebuilt Until Dawn is also prone to coming apart completely, like a serial killer's victim on the sharp end of a saw blade. I managed to make it through my full playthrough without ever being unceremoniously bumped out to the PlayStation 5's home screen, but another member of IGN staff reported no fewer than 6 crashes within the 8-hour story's opening half. Until Dawn is supposed to be about preventing its cast of characters from meeting a sudden death at the hands of an unspeakably evil presence, not an indecipherable Sony error code. Whereas the original Until Dawn is experienced mostly from fixed camera perspectives, the 2024 version, for the most part, favours an over-the-shoulder third-person view, not unlike the recently released Silent Hill 2 remake. There are definite benefits to this manual camera control system, both in the sense that it allows you to better observe the heightened detail in the creepy environments around you, and also swivel your viewpoint around to identify the small number of new areas to explore off the beaten path, like this car park outside the ski lift station that wasn't there before. However, there's not much of interest to find in this handful of new locations, and I can't help but feel that the new camera system works against the overall cinematic presentation. Until Dawn's consistent close-up chase cam meant it felt less like I was puppeteering the characters in an interactive slasher movie, and more like I was sauntering my way through a survival horror shooter minus the actual combat. It's also a strange choice that developer Ballistic Moon has scrapped the ability to walk faster in this remake. Characters will automatically break into a sprint during QuickTime event-heavy chase sequences, But otherwise, there's no longer the option of speeding the exploration of environments up a bit with the press of a button like you could previously. Combine that with a distinctly drunken sluggishness to character movement that sees them stumble a few steps too many in one direction after you've changed to another, and Until Dawn is now slower and clumsier to control than it used to be, which is not exactly ideal when you're trying to herd a group of hapless teenagers towards surviving the many horrors of the night.
I killed him! Whoa, Chris! I killed him!
The sloppier movement also makes it more of a chore to scour your surroundings for totems. Collecting these scattered Native American artifacts once again gives you brief glimpses at potential character fates, only this time their placements have been reshuffled, presumably to make finding them more of a challenge for returning players. That's all well and good, but I wish that actually triggering the premonitions hadn't been turned into such a fiddly process. In the original Until Dawn, you found a totem, flipped it over to see a character's potential death, and then moved on. Now you have to pick the totem up, then slowly shift it up and down and swivel it left and right before a tiny glimmer of light appears somewhere on its surface, and the vision is finally revealed. It just feels annoyingly unwieldy. A bit like trying to retrieve a pick from an acoustic guitar after you've accidentally dropped it into the sound hole, and really only serves to needlessly drag out what was previously a fairly immediate and straightforward process. This token totem twist is pretty much the only new gameplay mechanic of note. Aside from a slightly lengthened prologue and a new post-credits scene that hints at the possibility of a sequel, Until Dawn otherwise features all the same choices, quick time events, and potential character fates that it did previously, and the crowd-friendly pass-the-controller co-op gameplay introduced in later Supermassive Games adventures sadly hasn't been retrofitted in here. It is slightly more customizable to personal preferences though, so if you find that your hands are too shaky for the don't move sequences, you can just go ahead and disable them from the pause menu, for example.
Look at that.
Steady as a rock.
Yeah, but I shoot with this hand.
Overall, however, this Until Dawn remake remains a pretty hard sell given that right next to its listing on the PlayStation Store is the PlayStation 4 version, which still looks sharp and runs at a smooth 60 frames per second on the PlayStation 5 at only a fraction of the cost. The new Until Dawn costs over 4 times as much as the original, at least here in Australia, and there's no upgrade path for existing owners of the PS4 version, like there has been previously with other first-party Sony games like the PS5 ports of Horizon Zero Dawn and The Last of Us Part 2. To be fair, those were technically remasters rather than remakes, and The Last of Us Part 1 is a remake that also had no upgrade path from the PS3 or PS4 remastered versions, but I'd argue that the improvements to Until Dawn are so superficial that it feels much closer to a remaster than a remake anyway.
You guys gonna make out now?
Oh my god, totally. We're so gonna make out.
This remade version of Until Dawn features a substantial visual upgrade that brings it in line with some of the best looking horror adventures on the PlayStation 5. And Supermassive's definitive horror story is just as gory and schlocky as it's ever been.
No! We gotta go, okay?
However, its cinematic flair is slightly undermined by the new over-the-shoulder camera, and it suffers at the hands of a frame rate that's choppier than even the most caffeinated of axe murderers. Movement is noticeably slower and more sluggish than it used to be, and the handful of new gameplay features like the pointless totem-turning minigame are unwelcome and don't even come close to justifying this remake's premium price tag. Never mind the 8 potential victims to be found inside its cabin in the woods, if you're still determined to play this half-hearted horror remake, you should at least wait until it's the price that is slashed instead. For more IGN reviews, check out our verdicts on Undisputed and Metaphor Refantasio, and for everything else, stick with IGN.